world is on the brink of collapse with darkness creeping in from every corner, and the only light comes from a young girl's determination to save those she loves. A Plague Tale Requiem picks up where its predecessor left off, but where the first game was about escape, this one is about survival against all odds. This time around, Amicia and Hugo de Rune leave behind the war-torn landscapes of France in search of solace along the Mediterranean. But the siblings cannot really catch a break, and as always, the world around them continues to erode from the inside out by more insidious forces that seem to shadow the poor children's every move. The stakes feel higher, and what was once a tale of fleeing from danger is now a story of running towards the inescapable and facing it head-on.
Don't drop the torch! As long as you have it, they can't hurt you! What do they want with me? Come to us! We have to go back up! The sun will protect us! Calm down!
Speaking of which, Hugo's condition worsened a lot as his powers continued to grow following the events of the first game, and the kid has now become a ticking time bomb, representing a severe danger to himself and those around him. As for Amicia, she's no longer just a big sister trying to protect her younger brother and must now adapt to fulfill her responsibility as a protector, facing a harsh world where every path seems to lead to suffering and a constant struggle to do what's right. At a glance, Requiem refines the formula that made its predecessor legendary: stealth, puzzle solving, and bursts of brutal combat, all wrapped in an atmospheric veil of unrelenting tension. The environments are much richer, the characters act less like cardboard cutouts, and it really feels like the developers set out to make history with how much passion they poured into every scene. Despite a few occasional missteps, mainly in the pacing department, A Plague Tale Requiem is an exceptional experience. It is a game full of clashing aspects: beauty and ugliness, love and hate, control and chaos, to name a few. It invites players to step into a world where innocence is fleeting and survival demands a heavy price.
Come on, try a little piece.
Go on.
Oh, yum.
You like it?
Yes, but it's not piggies, right?
Now folks, be prepared for we'll explore together the harrowing world of Amicia and Hugo for the second time. But before we proceed, don't forget to cover up your face, unless the stench of decay doesn't annoy your nostrils much, that is. In modern day and age, few games make as strong an impression in their opening moments as A Plague Tale Requiem. As soon as the game's introductory sequence ends, you're thrust into a world brimming with beauty, where the sight of jaw-dropping Mediterranean vistas accompany our journey, offering a stunning contrast to the unspeakable horrors that unfold within the land's bowels. In its opening hours, Requiem invites players to feel as if they walk into a dream, where the charm of a picturesque setting serves to momentarily mask a looming threat. Suffice to say, the game wastes little time hinting at the encroaching darkness hiding beneath the surface, and I mean this quite literally, as we see the plot unceremoniously move from 0 to 100 at a startling speed.
We're done! We've got light! We're safe for now.
Perhaps sooner than expected, the oppressive side of death returns to haunt us, and corpses rotting in open skies become commonplace at a somewhat early turning point in the story, allowing that awful sense of unease we thought was left behind in the past to penetrate us once more. While the first few chapters feel like a casual introduction, the narrative takes a somber turn as they dive deeper into the mysteries behind Hugo's powers. Although his abilities to counter rats are majorly intriguing, they are also deeply unsettling due to their supernatural origins, and the game does an excellent job with the portrayal of the burden that these powers place on those around him, hence why a cure is desperately needed. Needless to say, the bond between Amicia and Hugo continues to take center stage, and it's hard not to be moved by their resilience despite their soul-shattering reality. As Amicia steps further into the role of protector, her evolution from a current sister to a hardened survivor is a subtle but powerful shift, one that catches you off guard as you realize just how far she's come from the girl who would usually flee from danger in the first game. There's a depth to their relationship that is not commonly seen in games, with the narrative constantly forcing Amicia to mature as she adapts to take the quest emblazoned upon her. Zooming out, the game has a story ripe with possibility, and as we venture through the world, its dedication to immersion is evident in the way it slowly reveals its layered beauty and lurking horrors, from the whisper of wind to the trace to the distant scurrying of rats in the dark. Not to mention, even the sound design itself also works tirelessly to support this atmosphere, instilling a gut-wrenching sense of dread at every turn. While the game's world may appear familiar to those who played the first installment, it's clear that Requiem pushes things to entirely new heights in multiple aspects. You don't need to glance at the screen twice to understand what I'm talking about here. The environments we explore are larger, more diverse, and far richer in detail. Whether you're exploring its colorful fields or passing through murky, rat-infested caverns, every area is as breathtaking as they come, blending top-tier world building to create serene landscapes that clash with the green marks left by the plague's presence. Every corner feels meticulously crafted, and there's an undeniable sense of scale and grandeur in the many paths and trails we set foot on. However, this larger scope does come with its own set of challenges and trade-offs. Like I mentioned before, the game's pacing can occasionally slow down in areas, particularly during stealth-heavy sequences. To contextualize a little bit, these moments can stretch on a bit too long at times, and while they often drag the momentum down, they're sufficiently balanced by thrilling action sequences or emotional moments that quickly return the focus to the stakes at hand.
Lucas!
Stairs! Run! You won't last!
What was that?
I call it stupefaction.
Overall, Plague Tale Requiem offers a delightful journey from top to bottom that stays with you long after you have finished it. It is a game that doesn't just aim to entertain, but to make you feel the crushing weight placed on the main character's shoulders, and let me tell you, it ain't easy to watch even as a spectator. Despite some minor slip-ups now and then, the game's emotional depth, intricate world building, and complex characters more than make up for anything I could complain about, leading to an insanely compelling experience. When all hope is lost, sometimes the only choice left is to fight with tooth and nail. And when the world seems intent on breaking us, then a fierce act of defiance is the only valid response. Not to mention, the less we have left to lose, the more dangerous we become, right? Yet, contrary to expectations, A Plague Tale Requiem isn't a game that relies on brute force. It instead thrives on tension, precision, and the feeling of being just one singular miscalculated move away from complete and utter disaster. Much like its predecessor, stealth remains the backbone of the experience in Requiem, as it generally serves as the safest, most reliable option, but for those willing to take risks, an aggressive approach is now an even more viable alternative. Of course, Amicia is by no means a warrior, and while she has more tools at her disposal this time around, survival still demands a healthy dose of intelligence over blind aggression, as one single mishap could leave you exposed to a deadly outcome. That means players need to think before they act, observe the surroundings, and choose their battles carefully in order to avoid finding an undesirable fate. That said, encounters also benefit from Requiem's more flexible approach, allowing players to freely choose how they want to tackle obstacles, whether through distractions, environmental hazards, or direct confrontation.
Where the hell is this?
Get lost!
Goodness. Well, it worked.
We did it in the past, but it's still...
Disturbing.
Yes. I may have to use it again. Anyway, thanks.
Similarly, enemy AI has also seen improvements over its predecessor, resulting in foes that are a lot more observant and reactive than ever before, which I must say isn't always a good thing, given that these merciless bastards can sometimes spot you from extremely far away, while other times it's almost comical how you can sneak right under their noses completely unnoticed. Moving on, despite the game's increased flexibility, certain elements still feel slightly rigid in their structure. While exploration and encounters encourage that adaptability, puzzles for instance often feel overly guided, given that braziers and climbable edges are placed with such crazy precision that they practically spell out the solution before you even have a chance to think for yourself. Instead of areas employing the usage of natural obstacles, they are filled with a bunch of carefully placed stepping stones, which from my point of view detracts slightly from the satisfaction and sense of achievement that should come with getting across areas unharmed. Another neat change Requiem introduces is an evolution to one of its key systems. If you're not too concerned with playing the hero and prefer to see the world burn regardless of the consequences, and I have got awesome news for you, as the alchemy system is here yet again to allow us to access special ammo types that can be used in Amicia's link for explosive or highly useful results. Personally, I'll admit it was a kind of a letdown that they didn't explore the potential of combining ingredients a bit more, but hey, at the very least we're given a couple of extra options as to what we can create, like the newly added flammables, pyrite and tar, which along with a couple other things make good enough additions in my book.
What is this?
Hurry! It won't last long!
Back! Get back! They don't like it!
On the other hand, players also have plenty of room for customization through weapon and equipment upgrades. The crafting mechanic returns, allowing for meaningful improvements to Armicia's arsenal, from increasing the potency of alchemical projectiles to reducing the noise emitted by her sling on every shot. To be completely honest, although both of these improvements together aren't as substantial as I would have hoped, at the end of the day they still add a welcome layer of customization and helpfulness, aiding our journey in a tangible way. Meanwhile, on the side, let's not forget that the game dials up its signature rod-based mechanics, as their connection to Hugo starts to take on a slightly more integral role. In short, they're no longer simply an accessory or an obstacle to avoid, becoming more of a weapon that we can use in pivotal moments by harnessing their raw, overwhelming power.
Control! Hugo!
Stop! I'll kill all of you!
But of course, as we learn over time, the game doesn't shy away from reminding you how dangerous it can be to dabble with this ally we understand so little about, adding even more tension to the use of this untamed power. On the surface, A Plague Tale Requiem plays very similarly to its predecessor, sometimes to a fault, but at least it attempts to refine nearly every aspect it recycles. It builds upon what worked, introduces new mechanics, and heightens the oppressive atmosphere that defines the series without trying to reinvent itself or change what didn't need changing. Though it may not stray far from its roots, I personally feel like Requiem adds enough depth and variety to make the experience feel fresh, proving that sometimes a couple of small updates here and there are everything that a good sequel needs. In real life, every action has consequences, that much is certain. But in a fantasy world as cruel as this one, does it really matter? Well, about that, in A Plague Tale's case, the answer is an unshakable yes. Here, player choices are far from mere window dressing, they shape the experience, particularly when it comes to relationships.
Kill people just like that!
Why? You do it all the time!
Because
And I can kill quicker than you!
you don't attack people by yourself! You listen to me and do as I say. Is that clear?
I don't care! They're all dead now anyway!
Hugo!
What the hell?
As said before, the game really isn't shy about reminding you that there are consequences to everything we do, echoing the idea that every naughty action, no matter how small, carries substantial weight. Take a more brutal path and you notice those around Amicia, whether they are foes or neutral figures, begin to question her humanity, seeing the toll that so much violence has on her psyche. Likewise, those who opt for a more peaceful approach will witness moments that reflect a more compassionate side of her character. In this regard, Requiem creates a narrative that feels responsive to the player's actions, underscoring the importance of being mindful of the ripple effect of being overly careless. On that note, the game excels at reflecting the impact of your decisions on the plotline itself, with moments that force you to reckon with the emotional aftermath of your actions, be it in how you decide to handle an encounter or the difficult decisions Amicia must make to protect her family and friends. And because Requiem is fundamentally about companionship and leaning on each other for support in an unforgiving world, seeing how much all this trauma affects those around us hits especially hard. Shifting topics a bit, but still on the subject of trauma, another familiar face that makes a comeback in Requiem is Lucas, the steadfast apprentice of Lady Beatrice de Rune, and our valuable companion in the search for a cure to Hugo's affliction. The young boy returns as a vocal presence, and his role as both a supportive ally and a moral touchstone becomes even more pronounced.
Good. I think we're safe for now.
I made sure of it.
You didn't have to kill them all.
Just be glad you're not in one of those carts.
Fact is, even Lucas' judgmental attitude towards the player serves a purpose beyond being grating for the sake of it. His tendency to call out Amicia amid her fits of rage may seem misplaced, but in truth, it is a deliberate part of the game's inner framework. In other words, he's a moral compass of sorts and thus behaves like a conscious reminder of what's at stake when you embrace brutality and start to delight yourself in throwing rocks too hard at the enemy's faces. And while I won't deny that his disapproving remarks can be bothersome, his presence ultimately adds necessary friction to the story, acting as a counterweight to Amicia's growing ruthlessness. Ethical dilemmas aside, the passive judgment from Lucas actually ties into Requiem's broader mechanics where, Instead of relying on a traditional skill tree, the game tracks your playstyle and adjusts Amisha's abilities accordingly. That is to say, our actions don't just affect how our characters react to us, but it also determines which perks and abilities we unlock. The system encourages players to develop Amisha's skills in a way that feels tailored to their favorite playstyle, allowing for a natural twist to emerge in place of the mechanics we are used to dealing with. From a distance, this can appear restrictive, especially when it feels like the game nudges you towards certain decisions early on. Fortunately, Requiem avoids locking you into a particular playstyle, offering enough flexibility as the game progresses to explore different paths without feeling punished for your choices. This means you're never kicked out of the game's full potential, even if you lean to a specific approach early on, which is always great. Ultimately, the game's strength lies in its ability to weave these various mechanics into a cohesive whole. The underlying systems work hand in hand with the narrative, reinforcing the emotional beats and moral complexities that define the experience. And although they may not always be groundbreaking, they still work seamlessly together to create an experience that feels both engaging and deeply memorable. Every journey must end, but some roads are paved with more blood, sorrow, and sacrifice than others. And Plague Tale Requiem is a story of endurance in the face of overwhelming darkness, a game that grips you with its unrelenting tension and refuses to let go. A majestic tale you truly don't want to miss, where every choice, every confrontation, and every decision feels like it carries the weight of survival itself. While not every aspect of the gameplay is flawless, Requiem still managed to come out on top and prove itself as a worthy successor, improving on the foundation laid by its predecessor in nearly every way. From its refined mechanics to its gorgeous visuals that breathe life into environments, each element has been treated to a meticulous dedication to creating a truly unforgettable experience. Although there are a few shortcomings here and there, Requiem never disappoints or falters, offering a well-paced and emotionally gripping ride from beginning to end. The balance between moments of high tension and calmer scenes ensures the game remains engaging and varied throughout its entire length, even when it strays into areas that could have been a letdown in less capable hands. Consider that a testament to Asobo Studio's impeccable attention to detail, which ensures Requiem stands out as far more than just another narrative-driven adventure out in the world. Despite some of my earlier comments, its slow burn and moments of introspection never feel like filler. Instead, they amplify the stakes, giving players room to process the harrowing journey without losing track of where they stand. As such, Requiem offers a satisfying close to the sibling story, one that feels appropriately bittersweet as they have crossed that threshold from cozy survival to something far more complex and profound. And whether this will be the final installment remains unknown, but if this is the last we see of the pair, it is a farewell that does them proper justice. If you were brought into this review after playing Innocence, then this sequel is an easy recommendation. An undeniably worthwhile journey, offering an epic exploration of survival, sacrifice, and the bonds that hold us together in moments when the whole world sort of falls apart. For more reviews like this one, consider subscribing, or if you prefer, you can find my content in written format by accessing the link in the description or pinned comment down below. Either way, I hope to catch you in the next one. Until then, take care folks.